Hi, beautiful filmmakers and screenwriters. It's Monday, so it's time to do Filmmaker to Filmmaker. I hope you guys are amazing and you had beautiful weekends and that you're gonna have an amazing week and everything's gonna be fabulous this week. You're gonna get shit done and it's gonna be wonderful. So today's question, I'm gonna pin it because I realize this is a good thing to do because then people know what I'm talking about when you come on, is essentially, is it worth submitting to screenplay competitions? Okay, so we're going to talk about that. But I'm going to read the email from this person. Hey, how are you? I'm just pinning the question from today. Okay, I'm posting it and then I pin it. I'm getting so good on Instagram. Look at me. Oh my God. Okay, yes, I did it. So there we go. That's the main question for today's Filmmaker to Filmmaker. Hey guys, happy Monday. Hope you're amazing. Hi. So the question today that I got sent to me, and I actually got sent, sorry to the filmmaker that sent this, it took me a couple weeks to get to you. You wrote, when you sold your first feature script, did you send it out to various screenplay competitions and get an offer that way? This is the first little question, and I can quickly answer that. No, I did not. I think I submitted it to the Nichols Awards, and I didn't get anywhere in it, I don't think. I can't really remember it so long ago, but no, it wasn't. I definitely didn't get into the semi-finals or anything like that. And no, I didn't, and that was the only one I submitted to. So he goes on to say, and I want to read this because I think it's really important and I think there's a lot to unpack here, and I think this could be helpful for a lot of people out there. I am resigned to making this feature myself as I don't want to give up creative control and sacrifice my vision. But at the same token, I'm starting to realize it's going to take a larger budget than I anticipated to achieve the vision I had in mind. Do you think sending out my feature to various screenplay competitions would be a good starting point to at least potentially raise some money for the project? I assume there are line producers and investors at these competitions looking for something great to invest in, but I wanted to hear your thoughts. Okay, so here are my thoughts. As I said, I personally did not submit to a bunch of competitions. The only one I submitted to with my first script was the Nichols, and I sold it without submitting it anywhere else. Okay, so that's one thing. But that's not to say that you shouldn't. Let's look at some of this, though, that you're saying. First of all, you go on and say, I am resigned to making this feature myself. And just a bunch of alarm bells went off for me. You do not make your feature yourself because you feel that is the only way to get it made, right? You do not make your feature yourself because you're resigned to it because it would just be impossible to do it any other way. You do not do it because you think it would be done better another way, but this is the only way it will happen. These are not good reasons to make it yourself. And I'm just going to call you out on this right now because I could just go, you need to change your thinking about this. You're not resigned to making. If you make your feature yourself, if you choose to make your feature yourself, you make that a positive choice, right? You're choosing to make this feature yourself because you believe you will get the best feature made that way. You will make the best movie that way. The aim is to make a great movie, right? And the aim is not to get caught up in our own funky thoughts that somehow, this is the only option to us. It's never the only option. There's always other options. It's just which is the option that is right for you and for your movie. Does that make sense? So please don't be resigned to making your feature yourself. If you choose to do it, but do it in a positive way and make that choice out of love and joy and excitement for your project, and not because you feel like this is your only option, desperation, fear, etc. So let's look at what you go and say. I don't want to give up creative control and sacrifice my vision. Well, who says if you sell it that you do have to give up those things? Whoever said that that is the case, right? A lot of us, I feel, as artists, we get into this space where we believe, right, that there's a choice. Like, either I do it myself and I get to have my vision, or I sell it and I don't get to have my vision. Look, there is another way. You might actually sell it and get to have your vision. Why not? You can have your cake and eat it. It is possible, okay? So I just would offer to you right now I really want you to dig into your views about your project. Like, let's just set aside the competition thing for a moment, the screenplay competition, and let's just look at like what you like, your vision for your movie and how you want to do it. The question is, do you want to make it yourself? Do you want to make your feature yourself? Or would you prefer to sell it and have somebody else produce it? Okay? And there's different reasons for going down the different paths. Budget will certainly be a part of it, because if you feel like it's going to take a huge budget to, execute this vision, to make this movie in a way that's reasonable, then yeah, you're probably going to want to sell it. You probably will want to get somebody else on board. You probably won't want to just make it yourself. Does that make sense? So that is one question. So, like to go, okay, this is actually a pretty big movie, and I feel like, yeah, selling it will be good. And you go into that knowing that there's a possibility that will mean giving up some level of creative control. Yes, but what you'll gain in return could be huge. I mean, obviously there's like great stories scattered through the history of cinema about people, who stuck to their guns to be the person that made it, such as Sylvester Stallone and Rocky springs to mind, right? So, it is possible that you would get the chance to actually get the money. So I would invite you, first of all, just to take some time to go, what do you really want? If anything could be true for your project, what would you have be true? What is your ideal dream scenario for it? And start working from that place rather than working already from a place of fear that, oh, well, I couldn't possibly get the money and have creative control. So I have to do it myself. But if I do it myself, I don't think I can get enough money. Do you see there's a lot of negative things going on there, I feel like. And I just don't feel like starting from a place of those negative things is a great place to start. I feel like when you start a project, it should start from a place of excitement and joy and anticipation and hope and belief that all the good things are possible, like utter belief that whichever path you choose for it, is possible, is real, is doable, is achievable. So I really, 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 really hope you can just take some time to do this work. Now you say, I'm starting to realize it's going to take a larger budget. Budgets of films are really, really fascinating, I don't know what your film is, but I would say if it's a rom-com or a drama or anything that's character-based and contemporary, it can generally be done for a pretty small budget, and it just takes a little bit of work to hone your script to make it doable on a very small one, right? But, if it's a period piece, if it's got a lot of action, if it's got a lot of special effects, stunts, etc., then it's probably going to be a greater budget. And if those things are necessary to the story, and I always go with the budget, you're always going what is really necessary, But if you're having these questions about, I'm starting to realize it's going to take a larger budget. First of all, get clear. Do you want to make the film yourself? If you do, then, it might be worth at this point getting a line producer on board to do an actual budget so you can actually see what you're looking at. What is, because until then it's just all spinning shit, basically. You're just sort of going, it might take a lot of money or it might not. I don't really know. How long is a piece of string? Well, talk to somebody that does budgets, get them to read your script, and even if initially they're not doing a detailed budget, get them to do a passover and just say, what do you think? Could it be made for this? Could it be made for that? Get the actual numbers, because until then it's all just it's all just theory. It's nothing real. So make it real for yourself. Find out the real, right? So I really recommend you get a line producer or somebody somebody who handles budgets, who can take a look at the script and who can say to you okay, I think it could be done for this, that, or the other. Okay. Somebody says my connection. Oh, hi! I didn't realize you were on. My thing wasn't scrolling. So I'm not leaving. Oh, so sweet. Okay, so that's that. So I would invite you, before we even talk about screenplay competitions, which we are going to get to, but I really, really want you just to take a little while to get clear about really what you want anyway. What you really want. Do you want to direct the film? If you want to direct it, then it's going to be a different equation again. So it's do you want to direct it? How much would it really take to make this movie? Is it something that you want to do yourself, or do you want to sell it? Okay? So these would be the questions that I would encourage you to answer. Just like journal on them. What's your ideal situation? What would be your ideal? Because that's what you should be going after, not anything that's sort of like, well, I'm going to go after this because that's not realistic. That for me feels just like wrong. You should always be going after what you really hope for, what you really believe to be possible. Now let's get into the question. So you said, do you think sending out my feature to various screenplay competitions would be a good starting point to at least potentially raise some money for the project? Yes and no. We're going to say yes and no. First of all, you can't lose anything by submitting to these screenplay competitions. The worst thing that happens is you lose your money, your submission fee, right? So, there's that. At best, you place highly in them. You feel validated yourself. You get to have a nice thing to add to your line when you're writing people letters. Oh, we placed this high, or I got semifinals here, I got finals there. I was chosen as number one there, right? So that can all add sort of like power to you. And I think it also adds power to you personally because you feel validated, right? You're no longer like, oh, am I a delusionary person thinking that I have a brilliant screenplay? Somebody else has said it's good, Although if you listen to me very often, you'll know I'm always banging on about don't look for that external validation. Validate yourself already, But do I think it's a good starting point to at least potentially raise some money? I don't know that it's necessary. Like, if what you're trying to do is raise money for your project, right, as a self-starting project, I wouldn't be like, oh, there's people working in the competitions who are going to give me money. I don't think it works like that, right? I think it's more that it gives you validation. So when you approach people, you can say that you placed highly in certain competitions, and that makes you seem more like a viable project, validated project, right? As opposed to there's people working at the competitions who are going to give you money. There are definitely people I hear about, that there are some producers and production companies who will look at the different, winners of competitions to look for projects. So there is that possibility, right? But they don't work at the competitions. They look at who's winning in the competitions and reach out to those people. Does that make sense? So do I think it's a good idea? Look, if you are looking to raise money, if you're looking to get your film set up, if you're looking to, move forward with your career, hell yeah, I think it's like, what bad could come out of submitting to the competitions? What bad thing? Because you don't have to tell anyone that you did submit and you didn't get anywhere, right? So you get validation if you get it, and if you don't, it's no big deal. You never have to tell anybody. So you won't lose anything other than the cost of the submission fee. So I say, why not? But I wouldn't ever make it my number one plan, right? I would never be just oh, do you know what? I'm going to submit to these competitions, and from that, somehow this is all going to fall together and happen. I would just never do that, because I think if you do that, you are seriously disempowering yourself, right? You're it's sort of like thinking, I guess it's like a lottery or something, right? Like joining a competition is really like getting a lottery ticket. And really what you're putting your hopes on there is that you win the lottery, right? That somehow your script gets chosen, suddenly everything clicks into place, someone gives you money, everything just happens for you, right? And all you had to do was stick a stamp on the submission, right? Or in this case, hit send, hit your your PayPal button to submit to the competition or whatever, right? And I just go, that's fine, but don't make that your only plan. Please, 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 do not make that your single plan for getting your movie made. Hey, John, how are you? I see you. Do not make that your only plan for getting your movie made. Do it because taking action is good. Do it because you feel guided or led to. You feel like this is a good next step for you. Do it because you believe that this could be something positive for your journey with your film. But don't do it because you think this is the only way to get money, or the only way that things are going to happen, or that it's like, oh, it's all going to magically come together. Don't do it for that, because I feel like if you do it for that, and when you don't get the results you want, you'll be knocked sideways. And to be honest, the result that you're wanting from that is a little far-fetched. I think it does happen once in a while that someone submits to a competition and suddenly, the doors open. But more likely than not, it won't, So do it because, there's other reasons to do it. And then know that you can follow through anyway, right? And as I said, I really, really encourage you to just get clear about really what it is you want for your feature, really what feels good and right for this project, and then really start pursuing that in a concentrated and focused manner. I hope that helps. I feel like the work here is less to do with the screenplays and more to do with figuring out really what your ideal scenario for this film and you getting it made is. And as I say, this just goes into those questions. Do you want to direct it? If you do want to direct it, and if you've never directed anything before, and it is a bigger budget, you're like, there's no way we could make this movie for less than $2 million or something, right? And you've actually done the research, and so that's real, and it's not just based on sort of like your idea of like, oh, it would cost $2 million to make this movie, but you've had someone look at it and give you, professional opinion on that. If you're in that scenario, I think what you will have to do in order to raise $2 million if you're a first-time director is you will have to make a short. And I generally you'll hear me say you don't have to make shorts if you want to make features, and that is true because I feel like you can make features, but it's going to be really hard for people to get behind you if you're a first-time director, if you haven't, if you've not proven yourself in some way. To get that kind of budget. And fair enough, right? Like if I have $2 million to invest in a movie, I'm probably not going to give it somebody who's never made one before, right? And who I don't know if they can deliver a movie. So if you do get into the space where you're like, I definitely, I've done my due diligence. I know this movie, the budget, the least it could be done for realistically is 1.5 or 2 or whatever it is. And I really want to direct it. If you're in this category, then I would say to you, really, really consider directing a short, as a sort of proof of concept. A great example of this, and there's many examples of filmmakers who have taken this path, but a very great one is the guy who did Whiplash. I'm having that Swiss cheese brain moment where I can't think of his name. You know who I mean. He did Whiplash, then he did La La Land. And then he won Best Director for that, didn't he? Someone's going to tell me what his name is. So he did, in order to get the budget for Whiplash, which was his first feature, he did do a proof of concept, a short film of Whiplash, which impressed the shit out of people. And he had people fighting over that script at that point because the proof of concept short was so good, And so I just go if you want to go down that track that you're thinking, I do want to raise a larger budget for it, then that is what I would encourage you to do. I wouldn't be thinking merely about screenplay competitions. I would be thinking about creating a short that is a proof of concept. If you decide that you do just want to make it yourself, then screenplay competitions don't matter a dot to you. They really don't matter at all. You can totally go out and raise the money for yourself and make the movie. You don't need to, saying that you submitted to a screenplay competition won't make a difference, but if you want to do it, you can still do it. If you're a screenwriter and you don't want to direct, if you're looking for you're looking for directors to connect with, then I would say in that scenario that actually submitting to the screenplay competitions could be of more value, because obviously, again, it's the external validation. If you've had no unproduced work up until this point, being able to say that you place highly at one of the prestigious screenplay competitions is going to help other people take you more seriously and read your work, So if you don't plan to direct and you're just a screenwriter, I shouldn't say just, you are an amazing screenwriter, right? Then in that case, it might be more worth it. So the last thing to say about this is, and the question really was sort of is it worth it? Do you think it's worth it? The final word on this is about make sure that you're applying to screenplay competitions that are smart or right for you. And this is just sort of doing your due diligence again. There's so many of them out there now. There are so many screenplay competitions. Make sure it's one that actually has weight, within the area that you want to work in, and that makes sense for the kind of work that you're doing. For instance, if you're sort of a real genre writer, it might not be the Sundance Labs or the Nichols. If you're, it's just finding the stuff that's right for you. I have before posted about the sort of ones, I think if you just Google it, you just Google screenplay contest worth the submission fee, right? Because obviously there are so many, and some of them are not worth the submission fee. What will come up is Nichols, Blacklist, Go Into the Story, etc. So just do your due diligence, But I go, I feel like action generally is good, like, so submit. It makes you feel like you're doing something. That can be very valuable in and of itself, right? Submit, but submit without expectation, submit without thinking this is my only way, submit without thinking, if I don't place in this, then I'm screwed. Submit without any attachment to the results, because great screenplays get overlooked every year at them. Shitty ones get all the kudos. No, I'm kidding. Great ones get all the kudos. But like, it's just a weird thing, and don't ever feel it's your be all and end all. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up shortly. There is another question here that came up. A lot of my ideas are large-scale Spielbergian types, and while I have smaller ideas, there's still a number of complicated elements to them. Any suggestions if I want to get one of those smaller ideas made myself? Yeah, just do it. Mo was like, I think it's a great place to be like, I have these big ideas and these aren't really doable for me right now, so let me generate something that is. And if you think about someone like one of the great filmmakers of our time, Chris Nolan, like, obviously he has very big ideas, right? He's like thinking on these epic, massive scales. But to get his career started, he made The Following, which is a smaller one. And so I 100% would encourage you, if you want to take this path, even Spielberg started with a movie like Duel, right? So, I just go like, if you want to take this path of like starting with something that you can do, and I think it's a really smart path to take, because it's the old thing, how do you get 100 million to make a movie? You do a movie for 10. How do you get 10 million? You do one for 1. How do you get 1 million? You do one for 100,000. Start where you are. How do you get 100,000? You do one for 10,000, right? So whichever entry point you can come into, like, enter there and make a movie. And if you can get 100,000, like, make a movie for 100,000 and work out ideas that you can do for that, so it's just like, just dig into it and just go, okay, like, if you think you get $100,000, like, what would work with that? What would work? And it's one of the challenges. I feel like a great filmmaker will be able to come up with ideas. A great screenwriter will always be able to come up with ideas. If you go, okay, it's going to be one location, and think of a location you can get, right? And there might be a few more, but mostly one location, right? And there's going to be 3 people in it, and it's these 3 people. And think, what could you come up with, and use those limitations to provoke your imagination. And it's often those films that are the best. I remember seeing a movie a couple years ago. Did you guys ever see that movie, The Disappearance of... Geez, my brain is like mush today. The Disappearance of Alice somebody or something. And it was just like, it was such a great thriller, and it was that thing. It was about a woman being kidnapped. And, hey... and the screenwriter, I saw him it was on at the Toronto Film Festival in probably like 2009, I would say 2009, and I was there. A friend of mine had a movie premiering, so I was there supporting her. And I went to see this movie, and it was like, I just loved the guy who was talking about it afterwards, the writer director. And he had various big films trying to get made for years, and he had just decided... Sorry, I do speak fast. I do speak fast. Somebody said you speak fast. He had just decided to make one for this small amount of money, because he was like sick of movies being in development, sick of movies not happening. So he just decided he was writing something that he could do, and he thought, one location, 3 people, and it's absolutely genius. I don't know if anyone knows the movie I'm talking about. It had Eddie Marsden in it, if that would help with IMDb. And it's just like, it was, a woman being kidnapped. It's mostly her and the hostage takers, the 2 men who kidnap her, in this one location. That's like 90% of the movie. Gemma Arterton was also in it. And I just thought it was absolutely genius. And it just reminded me, and there's so many examples of this, like, what can you do? And I think that is a great starting point for screenwriters. No, it wasn't Eleanor Rigby. It was definitely called like The Disappearance of Alice somebody. Because the title was also very brilliantly used. It was a genius movie. So I just go, if you feel like your ideas are huge, yeah, you can have all the huge ideas, but you can also like create constrictions for yourself and come up with an idea within that and make it. And that's what will get your career taking off, and that's what will get you the money to get the bigger film. And obviously, the trajectory that people plug into for that is Chris Nolan's example. He made The Following for $60,000. Out of that, he managed to raise the money for Memento, couple $1 million. Out of that, he got Insomnia. $10 million. Out of that, he got Batman. You know, and that's often how it goes. So I just go like, rather than waiting to get, he wouldn't have got the money from Memento if he hadn't made Following. You know, and he also probably wouldn't have been such a good filmmaker to really pull Memento off, because every time we make a movie we learn and we get better, you know. So this is why I always go, making movies is better than not making movies. It's better to make one for $100,000 than just not make one because you're waiting to get $1 million, if that makes sense. All right, you guys, I hope that helps to you. And then also, I hope this filmmaker who wrote to me with this question, I hope it helps. Feel free to reach out to me with any further questions around this. I love you guys. I totally you know, rooting for you all the time. If you, by the way, if you are wanting to write a screenplay, or you know anyone that is wanting to write one, I'm going to be doing some free live trainings very soon, so watch out for that. Registration is going to open again for my online course. Ah, yes, thank you. The Disappearance of Alice Creed. Yay, thank you. Have you guys seen that? Did you guys see that movie? Did anyone see that? I'm telling you, it's a like as an example of, like, you know, just that low budget, one location. And it really struck a chord with me. I remember seeing the guy talking about it afterwards, the writer director, you know, and hearing about why he wrote it this way. And actually he ended up raising more money than he expected. But it's a good example of like how you can do this on a tiny budget, you know, and just why it's often a good idea to write that way, to think that way, rather than, you know, pursuing the much bigger things. You know, those little ones can often be a key for you. Okay, guys, I hope that helps. And stay in touch. Have an awesome week. And as I say, look out if you're interested. I'm going to be doing a series of 3 free live classes on screenwriting in a couple weeks time. So if you're interested in those, make sure you stay tuned. All right, guys, have an awesome week. Bye.